If you're listening to this, chances are you know that feeling, that really stressful sense in modern life, that time itself is just speeding up. You look up, the week's gone, blink, and you realize you haven't really, enjoyed much. You've just been ticking off a list. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling that exact feeling, the anxiety that life's kind of slipping through your fingers. And we're not just philosophizing here. We're diving into some specific psychological research. We've got studies from places like Frontiers in Psychology and the Journal of Psychiatric Research. We want to explore how maybe the simple act of slowing down could radically change how you experience time.
Yeah, that's the core mission for you today, really. We want to try and untangle this paradox of productivity. Why is it that this constant push for growth, for hustling, for maximum efficiency, the state we might call overdrive, why does it often seem to lead to minimum fulfillment? It's counterintuitive, but the sources suggest this maximum effort. It can actually lead to feeling maximum emptiness.
Oh, that overdrive feeling is everywhere, isn't it? You wake up and bam, this surge of anxiety hits you. What needs fixing today? What do I need to achieve? Sometimes before your feet even hit the floor. And the sources we looked at really highlight this. When you're just relentlessly focused narrowly on that next goal, well, life starts to feel smaller. The moments just blur together, and your whole existence kind of passes by in this stressful haze.
Exactly, that haze. That's what we're trying to push back against. And look, when we talk about slowing down, we don't mean, quit your job, move to a cabin somewhere remote. Not necessarily. We really just mean bringing conscious, deliberate awareness right here to the present experience, simple as it sounds. But it's exceptionally challenging, right? Because we've sort of conditioned ourselves to thrive on perpetual motion.
And that conditioning, it's driven by what we could almost call the distraction machine. Why is being present so hard? It's because this constant, nonstop stream of digital noise. And we can actually quantify the pull of that digital temptation. The research here is pretty fascinating. There was this 2021 cohort study published in Frontiers in Psychology. They looked at over 300 people, and they mapped out this specific drivers, the reasons behind our constant digital checking. Found three main forces pulling us away. First, just that basic desire to stay connected. Makes sense. Second, the classic fear of missing out, FOMO, always lurking. And third, using the digital world as a sort of easy escape hatch, from anything that feels boring or difficult or just uncomfortable.
Right, but the detail that really pinpoints the problem for presence is this finding. The researchers noted people are most likely to reach for their phones, check notifications, during those moments when their minds are, well, unoccupied. Think quiet moments, waiting in line, any kind of non-interactive downtime. It suggests we've become psychologically uncomfortable with stillness itself.
That's such a crucial link to make. It's not just a bad habit. It's like a kind of internal rewiring happening. So,
Yeah.
Okay, we know why we check. But what does all that checking actually do to our internal operating system day to day?
What's fascinating and maybe a little unsettling is that this constant flow of stimulation, the steady drip of notifications, updates, new bits of info, it subtly trains your brain. It trains it to crave that same high level of arousal pretty much all the time. So if your baseline for feeling engaged is constantly jacked up, what happens when you encounter stillness? Or just a single quiet task? Your mind basically registers it as understimulated, and it immediately starts searching for the next fix, the next hit. And that makes restlessness, anxiety, and just scattered attention feel like the default setting.
Wow. So the result is, even when we are doing things that should feel meaningful, maybe reading something important, or having a deep conversation with a friend, or even just trying to savor a meal, our attention isn't fully there, it's scattered. Part of our mind is already anticipating the next thing we need to check, or do, or achieve. And that chronic fragmentation, it just drains our mental energy, right?
Yeah.
It makes deep engagement really rare, and it makes the whole texture of life feel less rich.
Exactly. And this chronic fragmentation, this is the direct link we see in the research between distraction and a warped perception of time. When your attention is habitually pulled outward, away from the present, significant moments can just pass by quickly, imperceptibly. And that leads straight back to that sense of emptiness or regret we talked about earlier. That feeling like, wow, I wasn't really present for the moments that actually mattered most.
Okay, so this raises a really critical question then. Does a scattered mind literally change how our internal clock functions? Is this feeling of time speeding up just, subjective? Or is there a measurable effect happening here?
The research strongly suggests it's measurable. Take, for example, a 2018 study. This one was in the Journal of Psychiatric Research. They looked at people who were at high risk for social media addiction, and they specifically measured their perception of duration. how long they felt things took. And the findings here, they really reveal the mechanism behind this time warping.
Okay, I'm curious, what did they actually find?
They found that the participants who were classified as high risk for addiction consistently overestimated how long specific tasks took. So they felt like the duration was dragging on. But conversely, the low-risk participants, they consistently underestimated the time for the same tasks.
Wait, hang on, that feels counterintuitive. If they're distracted, wouldn't time seem to fly by? Why would fragmented attention make a task feel longer?
That's the aha moment, isn't it? And it connects right back to the psychological mechanism we were just discussing. See, when your attention is fractured, when part of your brain is kind of anticipating the next notification, or it's actively struggling to suppress that urge to check your phone, your mind has to work incredibly hard just to hold on to the task at hand. That fragmented processing. It feels like heavy, slow labor to the brain. Your cognitive load is super high, and because that cognitive load is so high, the duration feels subjectively heavier, slower, and therefore longer, right in that moment. But and this is key because you weren't truly present for it, focused on it, it remains sort of empty in retrospect. It doesn't stick.
That is, wow, that's a phenomenal insight. So the brain is working overtime just to manage the distraction itself.
Yeah.
And that effort makes the objective moment feel subjectively slower, heavier, even though the lack of presence means the memory of it basically evaporates quickly. Okay, so if distraction contracts and warps time in this, well, frankly, unpleasant way, can conscious presence actually expand it? Can we reverse that?
Yeah. Yes, that seems to be the implication. The goal here is to consciously reverse that fragmentation. There was a massive review, just came out in 2024, published in Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews. They synthesized, I think it was 47 studies, all looking at mindfulness and time perception. And the big conclusion was that mindfulness doesn't just stretch the objective length of time. That's not quite it. It fundamentally transforms the quality of your awareness within whatever time you have.
Okay, let's look at how that transformation actually plays out in people who practice presence consistently. You mentioned the Frontiers in Psychology study earlier. It compared 42 experienced meditators these folks had, like an average of 10 years of practice. Compare them to 42 matched non-meditators. And they used two different kinds of time measurement tasks. The first set were objective time tasks, you know what the clock says, judging duration, reproducing time intervals accurately. And the surprise here maybe was that both groups were equally accurate. The meditators weren't inherently better at physically timing things. No difference there. Okay, but the second set, subjective time tasks. This was about how they felt about time passing. And here, the insight seems huge. The meditators reported significantly less time pressure in their lives. They experienced more time dilation moments, feeling stretched out. And overall, they reported a generally slower passage of time in their daily lives. Like the past week, the past month, it just felt like it had passed more slowly compared to the control group.
Right. And if you look closely at that finding, it does raise an important question, maybe a challenge. If their objective clock accuracy is the same, is this feeling of expanded subjective time just, I don't know, a pleasant delusion, wishful thinking?
Exactly. Is it real? Or it just feels nice?
Well, the interpretation is that no, it's not just wishful thinking. It speaks to that fundamental shift we talked about, moving from constant doing to simply being. The meditators, it seems, are just less likely to live their lives mentally in the future, constantly worried about deadlines, what's next. They're shifting their mode of engagement, moving away from being fueled by anxiety, that's the doing state, towards being grounded in attention, that's the being state. It's really a way of managing your focus so you move past that anxious cognitive load, the one that makes time feel so heavy and overwhelming. So no, they aren't magically adding hours to the day, but they're dramatically increasing the density and the quality of their experience within those hours.
That really feels like the core takeaway here. The expansion of time is really an expansion of attention. Okay, so let's bring this down to earth a bit, because the sources we looked at really emphasize that this slowing down thing, it's a deliberate lifestyle choice. It doesn't necessarily require, 10 years of formal sitting practice. It can start with small, conscious adjustments.
Exactly right. The most actionable steps that come out of this research really involve consciously increasing what we might call attention density, making your attention richer. So, first step, when something good is happening, pay closer attention. Notice specifically what brings you joy in that moment, and then actively savor it. Try treating joy almost like a short-term memory task. The more focus you dedicate to actually savoring it, not just rushing through it onto the next thing, the longer and more clearly that moment gets encoded into your subjective experience. That's how you slow down time, at least in your memory and experience of it.
And related to that, I think, is the practice of gratitude.
Yes, but again, not just the sort of rote action of saying thanks. The sources really recommend actively understanding why you feel thankful. When you actually stop, pause, and analyze the components of that gratitude, what specific sights or smells or actions or people were involved, you are deliberately applying presence, applying that attention density to a positive experience. It forces you to pause the internal clock and really anchor yourself in that moment.
So this deliberate attention, that's the mechanism of change. It forces you to step back from the constant rush just for a second, to actually take in what's happening right in front of you, and then to choose consciously to make your life feel richer with your presence rather than feeling thinner because of your distraction. The expansion of time, then, it comes from living each specific moment more deliberately and storing those moments with greater detail, more richness.
Ultimately, yeah. The profound insight that seems to tie all this research together is actually quite simple. Your attention determines how fully you live each moment. If your attention is scattered, fragmented, well, your life experience is going to feel scattered and fleeting too. It doesn't matter how busy you objectively are.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered the psychological reasons we tend to rush, how distraction actually seems to warp our internal clock, and how mindful attention, or presence, can subjectively expand our sense of time. For those of you listening who might want a more concrete way to maybe measure where your default awareness currently stands, you might want to explore the Mindful Attention Awareness Scale Test. It's a research-backed tool. It's based on a lot of the material we've discussed today, and it could be a great way just to gauge